right, Bel-Air fans. So I'm going to give my initial thoughts on the first three episodes. I haven't seen four yet, because my main focus is obviously the upcoming Medea film. And sisters, we got a face-to-face between Fatima and Karen coming up in front of all the other women. So that's obviously top priority. Plus, this is a streaming service show. So I don't know if I'm going to do episode by episode breakdown. Mainly because this is just a retelling of the original Fresh Prince of Bel-Air series. But with a more dramatic flair. I like it, actually. I know that there are people who feel like there's no reason to touch the original. This doesn't feel like the original series. I think for me, if you go into Bel-Air knowing that, okay, I need to take off my nostalgia glasses. This isn't the comedic family drama that it was back in the day, back in the 90s. You will enjoy this show for what it is. I think that, the main standouts are, in regards to how people put it on trending on Twitter. Uncle Phil, obviously, like the first thing that I saw trending. I think Aunt Viv might have popped up at one point in Carlton. But other than that, I just like how some of the characters kind of had updates. I mean, sure. I missed the wisecracking Jeffrey of old. But to actually have Jeffrey be the house manager as opposed to just a standard butler is a big deal. And hell, I believe there was one scene where him and Uncle Phil were just, playing pool, showing that they're more on a, friendly basis than the rich guy and his butler in the original series. Not only that, I think that in my personal opinion, I like that Hillary Banks is a character who is less ditzy than the original series. I mean, in episode 1, when Will showed up, I think this scene was in the initial trailer, when Hillary was excited to see Will and, helped him pick out a suit and everything. Go back to the original series. I remember that Will was chilling in the living room. I think it was Aunt Viv or Uncle Phil say, "Hillary, say hello to your cousin." Will, kind of waved. She's like, "Hi, Daddy, can I have $100? For what? I want a new hat." And that was pretty much it. As the season went on, Hillary kind of, opened up in terms of being cut off from all of her credit cards and needing to get a job. So her and Will kind of bonded as time went on. But to actually see, Hillary and Will on good terms, I thought was a great thing. Coco Jones does a good job portraying the character who's more of a social media influencer wanting to be a cook and whatnot. And I feel like this is kind of like a modern retelling of Hillary eventually getting her own talk show. What was she, a weather girl? And then she had her own talk show on television. And I just like the fact that Hillary feels more involved as opposed to just, hey, I'm the spoiled bratty rich girl with some good personality quirks. Ashley Banks, not much to talk about because she's barely in the first three episodes. I think she's 12 years old, like at the beginning of the original series. Obviously, her and Will, great family dynamic there. The bigger cousin, little cousin. Aunt Viv, I think that Cassandra Freeman does an amazing job in the role. It's just that, believe it or not, I think there are some elements of this Aunt Viv, while she has the skin tone of the original Aunt Viv, Janet Hubert, a darker complexion, some of the ways that she handles things, I feel like the light-skinned Aunt Viv would do, because there's a moment where I think that Aunt Viv gives Hillary a big opportunity to talk to a company that she's familiar with in regards to, her cooking and whatnot. But they kind of wanted to tone it down as opposed to not being so, black and soulful and making it more generic for multitudes of audiences and whatnot, not just the black community. Hillary stands firm on her beliefs as to, hey, I don't want my black product to be, I guess you could say, decolored, desaturated just to appeal to the masses. And the Aunt Viv from the original series, I feel like she definitely would have sided with Hillary as opposed to the Aunt Viv of Bel-Air kind of reprimanding her for it in regards to, hey, you just messed up a great relationship I had with this company. What you need to do is kind of, I guess you could say, lower your standards just to make your way to get, basically get your foot in the door. I mean, Aunt Viv obviously loves her nephew Will, and it's funny because there's a moment where it definitely feels like, Aunt Viv pulls Will to the side to stop being so, I guess you could say not pig-headed, but pretty much stubborn. It's like, look, be the Will you were in West Philly, talented, charming, and everything. It's almost like Aunt Viv is saying, look, I was just like you, Will, but I had to compromise a few things in terms of my persona in order to fit this new society that I'm in now, basically from being a have-not to a have. So it's like Aunt Viv is semi-bougie, and I mean, it kind of rubs off into Carlton, who, if Will is like it's funny how the skin tones are kind of flip here, but if Will Smith is kind of like T'Challa in a sense, then Carlton is Killmonger, because of the fact that, I know it seems weird to say because Killmonger was all about colonizers and all, but you got Carlton, who has the complexion of T'Challa, who's really like, rubbing elbows with the white people to, hey, I'm rich, whatever. I just want to, make it in this society. And then you have Will, who's the same complexion as Killmonger from, the hood and whatnot. He's the charismatic one who, the family just loves. Obviously not at first, Uncle Phil, and I'll get to like different actors and their performances and whatnot, but honestly, I feel like this is more important in order to give you my initial thoughts on the series, as opposed to just saying, hey, in episode 1 this happened. The story. In episode 1, it feels like a lot of the story is rushed, but that's because of the fact that in the theme song of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I got a one little fight and my mom got scared on the basketball court. That's really it. Will is the kind of person where his buddy Trey, who only had one episode in the original series, is kind of like the Jazz that Will had when he was in Bel-Air. A fight breaks out, and in order to save Trey, Will grabs Trey's gun, and then from there, that caused the police to show up, and then he gets arrested, and then this low-level gangster is looking at Will, basically pick him off, and his mom, who's played by April Parker Jones, aka Natalie from If Loving You Is Wrong, Viola or Vi, he gets scared and sends her son off to Bel-Air. But I will say this much: looking at episode 1, I love how some of the characters in the original series are given more weight and meat to their personas, because Trey, for example, like I said, one episode in the original series, he is really built out to be Will's friend in this series. Then we go over to Vi, who had a, handful of episode appearances in the original series, but I feel like this series, in the few episodes I've watched, have definitely done a better job of establishing the relationship and dynamic between these two. Like I said, I really did love the original series, but I feel like since, they're really taking the time to show us instead of tell us the different dynamics between the characters. Hell, Lisa showed up in season or episode 1. Turns out she's Carlton's ex-girlfriend, and I'm like, oh snap. It's just interesting because the Lisa of the original series didn't show up until season 4 or 5 or something like that. So I just love the fact they're playing around with the different puzzle pieces of the original series. They're putting them together in different ways, and even though this series is built on the foundation of the Fresh Prince, I feel like by the end of it, there's going to be a different portrait than what we know the series to actually be. Uncle Phil, of course, James Avery is iconic in the role, and given the fact that some people look at Adrian Holmes, Philip Banks as the model, because, when you think Uncle Phil, you think of the pudgy, angry uncle with a heart of gold. There obviously Uncle Phil had a lot of moments like Carl Winslow when he would blow up at Will the same way Carl would at Steve, but Uncle Phil is best known and most quoted from his moments of love and fatherhood with Will. And the Carlton dynamic is the fact that there were times in these episodes where it felt like, even though Uncle Phil and Will would butt heads at times, Uncle Phil really cares about Will. And look, tell me if this is just me. There were moments where it felt like Will is the son that Uncle Phil wishes Carlton was. That's what I thought at times. And then, of course, Carlton and Will, like in the original series, they butted heads a lot, especially like in season 1. But then as the show went on, there was always like that little twerp versus hood rat mentality. But you could tell they kind of respected each other. Carlton straight up just hates Will, between getting mad that his ex-girlfriend is getting close to his cousin, the fact that the family seems to warm up to Will more than him. Then in episode 1, we find that he's sniffing what's it called, a Xanax or something like that. So it's like, damn, I mean, I knew they were going to make a dramatic retelling, but there's a lot of, drugs, sex, N-words and whatnot, and the fact that he's cool with the white kids at the school, saying the N-word, and Will, starts something with, what's the dude's name? Connor. I mean, this dude, that plays Connor, what's his name? Tyler Barnhart. I hate him, but he's doing such a great job in the role that's because I'm supposed to hate him as a character. But it's a very interesting, social, political commentary there on the N-word where, Carlton brings up the fact that, black rappers sell to millions of white kids who pretty much absorb that music, and you expect them to not use the word they're listening to. So it's interesting to see the difference between a black person who is integrated into that white society versus a black person on the outside who are just like, okay, this isn't right. What's going on here? Basically, well, a sellout. So the dynamic or the friction between Carlton and Will is understandable, but as a person that can't swim, I definitely felt like it was messed up how Carlton shoved Will into the pool, and then when Will got helped out by Lisa, he punched Connor, and Carlton, I definitely would have done the same thing. Basically, when it comes to it, Will and Uncle Phil have a great dynamic as well, with Uncle Phil basically setting up his campaign, and the conversation about the system comes up, so it's very interesting to see the two opposing sides of that. But to be completely honest, I think that Jazz is probably one of my favorite characters in the new retelling, given the fact that I think that I always got it confused when I watched the original series. I thought that Jazz was a friend that Will had from back in Philly. But in this series, he's kind of like, a rideshare Uber driver who, gets Will from like the airport and whatnot and brings him to his family's house, Uncle Phil's mansion. And I just like the fact that they really did a great job establishing these two meeting for the first time as opposed to Jazz just randomly showing up in the series. Because in the original, Jazzy, Jeff, and Will, partners in quote unquote crime/music. So to actually see them form their dynamic makes a lot of sense. I really love that. And if you didn't know, if you're a fan of Tyler Perry, his show The Oval, the actress Tosha Story, who portrays Nancy, that's her son who plays Jazz. And Jazz is one of my favorite characters in the series. If I were to like to name my top 3, maybe Jazz, Jeffrey, and I probably will say Hillary, just because of the fact that I love what they did with these characters from the original series, and they kind of gave them more meat to the sandwich, so to speak. Will, I think Jabari Banks does a pretty good job with the role. I mean, the difference between the Wills is that the Fresh Prince, he was like this, smart aleck, guy with street smarts and charm. But then with the Will Smith of Bel-Air, if you watch the first episode, there are a lot of times where his smart mouth kind of gets those around him in trouble as opposed to, him taking the heat for a situation. I'm like, dang, it's like, train these guys, your crew, they pretty much keep you from getting beat down because you talk yourself into a lot of shit more often than not. I think that overall the cast dynamic is pretty good. It isn't just, here's a bunch of good looking, black people playing these roles. I think they all bring something different to the table. So, I'm really going to cut the review off here because I feel like I can go on for another 20 minutes. But I think Bel-Air is it's different You know, I feel like sometimes, things can be shoehorned in regards to, the black struggles. Oh, yeah, we got to talk about gang violence. We got to talk about, black people losing themselves once they get into like, the rich white society. Like I think Phil's, old fraternity shows up and questions like, you ain't down with the cause like you used to be, without realizing that as time goes on, people change. Like at the core, you don't lose who you are, but you understand that sometimes in order to change the system, you got to be a part of it too. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. What do you think of Bel-Air so far? Do you enjoy it? Do you feel like they should have just left the series alone? Are you going to watch this series at all? Or are you just going to wait for all 10 episodes to become available on, I believe, Peacock? So I really do feel like, if you go into this show knowing that it's different than the original, then you're going to enjoy it for what it is. So I think it's one of the better reboots that I've seen in recent years. So let's talk about it more in the comment section below. What elements did I not talk about from the first 3 episodes that you wish I would have? And perhaps, I might do this more, like maybe after the next 3 episodes, I might do another follow-up video. So what, episode 4, 5, and 6, maybe even 7. But yeah, like and subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and select all. Follow me on social media. Links are in the description below. And if you would like to donate to the channel, feel free to do so on PayPal or Cash App.